Okay, so today we're going to talk about visa petitions for healthcare workers and discuss a little bit the certification or what you call the visa screen, or for nurses and PT, the most commonly known term for it would be like getting your CGFNS.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, what are the options for healthcare workers?
Well, um, healthcare workers are obviously needed, so it's not so hard to find jobs.
Hmm.
There are a few positions where it's specifically stated that they are needed, like nurses and physical therapists. That's why we skip some steps for them, which makes the process a little bit shorter, depending on the category, of course. So they can obviously come as non-immigrants for, let's say, H1B, or some other type of working visa, but does not lead to a green card, or to be petitioned already as a permanent resident, or to become a permanent resident and therefore a permanent worker, which is going to be a green card. So you can be petitioned while you're here on a valid visa, another visa, maybe an H1B or a tourist visa or a student visa, or you are still in your home country and the process starts here. And when you are approved, then you come in with an immigrant visa or a green card already. But obviously, there are many requirements, and I think the most difficult to get would be the healthcare worker certification, or what we call the visa screen.
Hmm.
But I think you know more about this. But to start off, what are the seven
So,
healthcare workers?
when we talk about healthcare worker certification, we omit physicians because physicians are their own category.
Yeah, they have
So,
their own
yeah, their own way.
petition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we talk about healthcare worker certification, we are mainly talking about like seven professions that are related to healthcare, obviously, but they have their own each they have their own certification, right? So we have nurses, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists and audiologists, medical technologists, medical technicians, and physician assistants.
Yeah, so medical technologists and medical technicians are two different categories. So for
Yeah,
some countries, this probably would be one, but it would depend on your educational background, I guess.
yeah.
So it
So
depends whether you can be considered as a medical technologist or a medical technician.
yeah, that presents a problem when you have to validate your title. When you go through the process of validating your education, sometimes it's a little bit blurry. The line is a little bit blurry, so it's very difficult when there's no in countries that is not distinguished.
Yeah, but I think a country will probably have their own. Like, for example, in
Yeah.
the Philippines, we don't have medical technicians. We have medical technologists, and that's it. It's a 4-year degree,
Yeah.
BS degree, and requiring a state exam.
Okay. So one question that keeps popping is nurses, for example, they ask when do they have to have these healthcare certification?
Well, the okay, that's it's a little bit um tricky, but for me, the USCIS has that upon petition you should be qualified, right?
Yeah.
And for me, qualification means you have the license, and you have the education, obviously, and the test, passing the test.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have a license for it. But you can obviously get a license and not have the complete package, right?
Correct.
You don't get the certificate
Yeah.
yet, but you have a license to do it. I think it's not safe, although it's been done, where
Yeah.
you get your license first for nurses,
Mhm.
and you're still waiting for this actual certificate.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are qualified in the sense that you have the education and the license, you have passed the test, but you don't have the actual paper certifying you.
Correct.
from CGFNS, for example.
So in the USCIS website, for example, they clearly distinguish between two steps. One is when you got you have to do the petition, the I-140, and then the second step is when you do the I-485, and that second step is where they said that you are required to have
Yeah.
that. But
So-
as I was going to ask you, it's like the USCIS might find it difficult to believe that there were no citizens or green card holders available at that time with all the requirements.
No. For nurses and physical therapists, you don't need that requirement.
Yeah.
Meaning you don't need to justify that because it's already been justified by them.
Okay.
So you skip that. That's why I said they're under a different kind of petition, since we skip the step of having to prove that there are no other people available at that time that are U.S. citizens or who are U.S. citizens or residents of the U.S. So it's not that. It's more of what qualifies you at that time.
Correct.
So basically, there are two petitions or application. One application is from the employer saying, I'm applying to hire someone.
Yeah.
A nurse or whatever, a healthcare worker. And these are my qualifications, meaning the employer's qualifications would be there is a job available and they can pay this person and these are the requirements that they need. This is the position, blah, blah, blah. And then the other one would be for the person, the employee, to also apply for the status, which in this case is, let's say, green card, right? So not all... Some petitions you can file both together. The employer and the employee file both things together.
Yeah.
So once you have filed that, it means that you are saying that you are qualified at that time you filed it.
Correct.
So you should have the visa screen.
Okay.
But if for some other categories where the I-485, which is the adjustment, which is the employee's side application of the process, is gonna be filed later. Let's say a year later or 2 years later because of priority dates, which is another discussion. But for some reason cannot file it together with the employer, only the employer files, then it's possible that the employee does not have the visa screen, but has all the other qualifications, meaning license, let's say New York license, the passing of the test, and having the education. And then you're already applying for the visa screen because it takes a while for CGFNS, for example, to issue you one. So by the time the date comes in where you have to file the I-485, which is the application for adjustment of status to green card, you will already have it. Or if you're outside the country, you don't file a 485, but you filed through the embassy.
Correct.
Then you should have it in your hand when you go to your interview already.
Correct.
Not that you get it after you have submitted, even though they haven't done anything yet.
Correct. I think, and I don't know if it's the same to you, but I think that sometimes clients get upset about certain things, and in particular, there are some that don't understand that this is the minimum requirement, meaning that this is not it. The USCIS might ask you for extra things, and they might ask you, well, but I met all the criteria when I submit, and they don't understand sometimes that this is just a minimum, that the USCIS, it might still require more. Like, for example, they are not sure that you qualify for certain type of jobs as a nurse, and then they might say, okay, what's your experience or your background?
Well, then that's not... It's a problem of the person doing the petition,
Correct.
The employer and the lawyer, if there's a lawyer who does that, because everything should be clean in the beginning anyway.
Yeah.
You should have talked over what is the position, what is the qualification, and this person that you're gonna hire should have it. I mean, it's not fair if you tell them at the end of it that they don't have it.
Yeah.
And which is a problem that I've seen over and over, petitions have been filed for people and they don't even know what it is. So I think it's also your obligation as an applicant to know what is being done for you, and for you to see if you are qualified or not. If you're not qualified, then why apply? I mean,
Correct, but I think in that case is because there's a lack of education in both sides, meaning the applicant and also the petitioner.
Yeah, and it's a lawyer's job
Correct.
to make sure that they know what it is. So, I mean, yeah, we have the minimum, right? Like education, obviously. For example, an RN would have a 4-year education, right? I'm not sure. Yeah, 4-year education. For example, physical therapist would be like 4 to 5, especially if now requiring like a master's level. Or a doctorate, which would be like 5-6 probably years of education only, and then passing the test, and then getting qualified to do that. And then if the employer says, "Oh, I want someone with experience," then that is also required.
Yeah.
Right? 2 months, 2 years, 6 months, 5 years, depending on the position. Supervisors would normally have maybe 5.
Yeah.
Someone higher, I mean, that's just logical, right? Like, you cannot expect someone who just graduated with no experience to apply for a nurse supervisor. And even if you say you don't know the law, I mean, logically, you should feel weirded out that you're gonna be a supervisor when you don't even have anything.
Correct.
So that will be minimum.
But my question was more of like, with this example, I think is a little bit more clear. Let's say, for example, physical therapists in Europe, most times they come with what would be a bachelor degree. It would be a 4-year degree, and then they come here and then they realize that it's a master's degree. So let's say that for the sake of the argument, you have your equivalence, and then you have some experience, and then your experience count at the end as a master's degree or higher. Got it? And then you obtain a certificate by credentialing agency or company, and now the USCIS is reviewing your case, and then can they ask you for more? Can they say, well, although you have the credential and I can see that you have been that there's an equivalence between that and our educational requirement, I still doubt that is. Can they ask you for?
What do you mean by I still doubt? I don't understand it.
Like, for example, the USCIS might say, okay, I recognize that you have a credentialing, you have an evaluation, and then the evaluation clearly states that you have a master's degree or equivalent, but I, the USCIS person, don't think that. Can you show me more proof?
Okay, wait a minute. So before anything else, you have to make sure that for a particular position that is allowed, because there are some where it does not allow that. You have to have the education and not an equivalent.
Correct.
And for healthcare workers, it's mostly education.
Correct. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that again, this is the case. Like, the person is a physical therapist, had a 4-year degree, and had like 5 or 6 years or 10 years of experience. And then when the credentialing agency was doing an evaluation, they determined that in fact they, meaning the company, the credentialing agency, considered that person as someone with a master's degree or equivalent.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you mean, but unfortunately, the example is not so good because for physical therapists, for example, there is an educational requirement. So you cannot have that. You know what I mean? Like, it will never be equivalent. Experience will never be equivalent to education. Do you get it?
What do you mean?
So for some, for example, let's say teacher, for example. Well, not teachers, because teachers have licenses, but for some other position where you require, let's say, 4-year degree, right? Not for healthcare workers. You say 4-year degree, and then the person has a 3-year degree but has extensive experience in that field, and the evaluator or the credentialing or the evaluator has determined that this person actually has let's say a 5-year degree, which is like a master's already. So the equivalent of it to a US education would be a master's in, let's say, business. Right? So that's fine, because the USCIS has not specified that it has to be the education only. So you can get the educational requirement by using some experience. But for some, especially for healthcare, except for like LPNs where you can get the required education through experience, right? For some healthcare workers, they require the school part plus the experience part, and not an equivalent of the school part as experience. In terms of category, then that's where we look at the like I think you hear EB1, EB2, EB3, things like that.
Yeah.
EB2 has advanced degrees. So to get an advanced degree, this is what you should have. You should have a specialty,
Yeah.
and then you have the experience. So for example, it's a 4-year course like nursing, but you have like an RN, a
Yeah.
BSN, but you have 5 years of progressive experience.
Yeah.
Then you're considered an advanced degree, even though there's no master's attached to your
Yeah.
BSN, right?
Yeah.
So it's still considered. So what I mean, it's hard to generalize everything right now, but in terms of getting the certificate, if the credentialing agency, which are assigned, by the way, by USCIS, am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, they tell you where.
Yeah. So there are different organizations that can authorize, but yes.
The most common would be
For physical therapists, is the Foreign Credentialing Commission on Physical Therapy.
then
It's
for-
FCCPT.
and for nursing,
Is the CGFNS.
which is the most
Yeah, the CGFNS is the most popular because it's the one that can certify all
All
of the
other-
professions,
yeah.
including physical therapists. Is the oldest one as well. And the other two, which are the MBCOT, which is for occupational therapists, and FCCPT, that are for physical therapists only, can give you a certificate for those professions. That's it.
So I mean, before we go back to what we were talking about, so if you are an occupational therapist, then we would suggest you go to NBCOT, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a physical therapist, we would suggest that you go to FCCPT.
Yeah, because it's less crowded.
Yeah, and it's specialized, like
Yeah.
they know you.
Yeah.
But for all others, then you go to CGFNS. And I think we've been hearing that they really have a lot of people, so it's like taking longer than normal.
Okay.
So going back, like the CGFNS already tells you that this is your education that you require.
Yeah.
And then they will, for nurses, and then they will kind of give you some like leeway in taking the English test, for example, if you have had this, or if you started in this year, things like that. And so with the others, I think we should discuss it more, just this process in
Yeah.
a different announcement. I don't know. I mean, for now, we were just talking about the process, right?
Yeah.
For the visa. So this is one of the, well, I think for me the most important
Which one?
step, the certification,
healthcare certificate. Yeah.
because you really will not be able to get anything if you don't have it.
Yeah.
And they're very strict. Like the last ones that we've seen from FCCPT, they're like counting all of the credits, including credits that are not really included in your major but you took,
Yeah.
to see if it will reach the minimum. What is the minimum now
Of what?
of physical therapists, like a master's level, right?
Masters, but they're walking towards the doctorate to be the minimum degree.
Is it longer?
The doctorate, yes. The only thing is that now there's a combined degree that allows you to
Go straight.
go straight
How
for
long will it take?
6 years is, I think, the minimum, which
So
is
it's like the same, like 4 years regular, then
Yeah.
2 years.
2 years.
So it's like a long
Yeah,
time.
it's
So
longer.
those who've graduated before and has not worked yet, then you would be required to, I mean, you haven't started, then you
Yeah.
would be required to get those extra ones, right?
Yeah, there's this figure also of the transitional DPT, which means that while you are, let's say, adapting your curriculum to the new requirement, you're allowed to work, but then you have like a special category in which you would be kind of like stating
Like a
that.
license.
Yeah, so the DPTs that figure of the transitional from your degree, whatever it is your degree. Sometimes people have been working for a long time and they started when they only had a bachelor degree, and some other people have a master's degree. So the case is that what are you going to do with those people? Well, until this norm is fully applicable, and we don't know exactly when it's going to be applied for everyone, meaning being the minimum requirement for absolutely everyone. In the meantime, there's this period in which people will be allowed to work, and then
But they have already worked.
yeah, most people, as I said, is people who already have a license, they have been working, and then they just want to transition into the new requirement, which is of a doctorate.
But I just wanna interrupt and say that this does not have anything to do with having a work visa. We're
No.
just talking about licenses.
Correct. So these would only apply for those who already have. If you're trying to get a new visa, the minimum requirement as of right now still is a master's degree. So that's it.
For based on our experience, like from the Philippines, which is PT is a 4-year degree, but those who have taken extra credits
Yep.
might qualify as a master's level, right?
Yeah, that's what I was asking before, because it's not only in the Philippines. Many, as I said, in Europe, most physical therapists study would be a bachelor degree, which is a 4-year degree, and sometimes the experience count as a is not only about the experience itself, is about like the number of hours and the credits that you have while you are studying, which is another important part. It's not that you only with your work experience you're gonna compensate for that. You might even be required to have extra credits for you to get that.
Yeah, I would err on the side of caution where
Yeah.
I would say you need the credits.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we can rely right now too much on just experience. That it will be acceptable as an equivalent, but I think we need the credits for that, because they're very strict about what they call the side-by-side evaluation. Like they really look at all these courses that you've taken and see whether it will hold up to the,
Correct. So one other thing. So can you talk about like the difference between, and again, we're going to talk about exclusively about immigrant petitions, about a person being here in the United States and a person being outside the United States.
The one who is in the United States need to have a visa.
Yeah.
Any kind of visa while they're here. And while they're here, someone can an employer can want them, like want them to work for them and petition for them as a regular permanent worker.
Yeah.
Which means since you are permanent and regular, you would need to live here, right? So it translates to a residency or a green card. So while you're waiting for that, the time for you to be able to apply for the green card and mean that you can work under that green card will depend on the category of the position, the skills, the qualifications, and the waiting time based on your home country or where you were born. So that's where the what they call the priority dates come in. So there are a few countries like India and China, Philippines. What else?
Mexico,
yeah.
Ecuador.
So there's like a waiting time Just that's what I call it, waiting time before you can even apply for the green card and therefore working. But if you do have another type of visa which allows you to work, then yes, you can work while you're waiting for that. And so when should you have your certificate? When if you're not working, let's say you're a student, you're on F1 visa, then you don't need a certificate yet, right? But you will need it when you apply for the green card or the I-485 in the future.
Yeah.
So let's say in a year or two. So maybe you should start now, even though you're just waiting for 2 years, because it might take a long time. Now, for some other categories where there's no waiting time, meaning you can apply right away after the employer has petitioned you, or at the same time, you will need the certificate already. So you should have done it prior.
Correct. And what about non-immigrant petitions?
So non-immigrant petitions, like from the term itself, is not gearing towards living here permanently, meaning the job is temporary. So for H1Bs, it could be 3 years, 6 years. For what others? I think that's the only one.
Yeah, well, for some...
For healthcare.
Yeah, for some could be, but that's more of doctors. The J1 could be a valid...
Yeah. But then it's like...
It's similar to the doctors.
It's like educational sort of.
Correct.
And then they have to go back.
Correct.
Yeah, so for non-immigrant visas, whatever is the requirement for your profession, you should have it.
So
licensing and...
Yeah, I mean, it's required to have, you're required to have the healthcare certification as well. And I was going to ask you, because there's a case in which, for example, if you're here in the United States, I heard that when you do the form, the I-129,
that's for H1B.
Correct. That may also serve as an application to extend the period in which you are allowed to be here, meaning there's no extra step. That also serves as a way of saying, okay, whatever the status it is that you have here, we're going to extend it until you
get it.
Yes.
Okay, so an H1B is, as I said, temporary work, right?
Yeah.
But it could be the same job, like nurse.
Yeah.
Let's say nurse supervisor, for example, and you're an H1B, but it's non-immigrant, meaning they haven't declared that they need you to live here. They only need you for 3 years and then maybe another 3 or whatever.
Correct.
But then after your 3 years, let's say they decided that they want you to stay as a permanent resident here and a permanent worker with them. So they do the application for the green card, right?
Yeah.
Which is a totally separate application from your current H1B temporary working visa. And then basically, as I said, if you're here in the US, you need a visa.
Yeah.
And you need to maintain it. So you're using that to maintain your status while you're waiting. So if, for example, the non-immigrant visa has an expiry, you can extend it and then still work legally and stay here legally while you're waiting for the other one to kick in.
Correct. So what happened with the H1B and nurses? What do you think about H1B and nurses?
I think the opinion, the USCIS opinion, was that just a regular nurse is not a specialty occupation, which is a different discussion that we need to discuss. So H1Bs are only for specialty occupations, right? Meaning you need a certain type of education and experience to be able to do the job. Like if you don't have that occupation and that experience, if you don't have the education, which is the degree, and the experience, you will not be able to do the job.
Okay.
So what they're saying is that for nurses before, it did not qualify as a specialty occupation because I guess it's because you can be a nurse, a real nurse, if just by getting an associate degree at the beginning, which is a 2-year course, which they don't consider as something a specialty occupation would have. That's why they think that it's not H1B. But if it's something specific, for example, an ER or pediatric nurse or
Yeah.
a supervisor, which really requires, some type of specialized skill,
Yeah.
then it's a specialty occupation. So it's been hard to, especially now, but before it was easier, but now I think it's almost impossible.
Okay. So, in your opinion, would be better to just go ahead and try the green card rather
Yeah,
than
I mean, especially if you're not here.
yeah,
I mean, you just wait.
yeah,
Especially if you're from a country where the waiting time is negligible,
yeah.
then you can just wait for it and it's a green card already. You don't even have to worry about extending or whatever.
Okay. So, lastly, what would you say to companies like staffing agencies, hospitals, clinics who try to hire someone? What is your like 3 points or whatever number you want to give, but like the most important points in terms of healthcare credentialing, especially that they should know before they actually start the petition?
Yeah, well, first of all, what are the jobs?
Yeah.
Like, if you're a staffing agency, what type of clients do you have? I don't even know how to.
Yeah.
It's probably
Yeah.
clients, right? Like, are they hospitals? Are they nursing homes? Are they rehabilitation centers?
Yeah.
What kind? And then what's the need of those facilities?
Mhm.
Do they need a specialty? Like a work, like a healthcare worker with a specialization.
Yeah.
Are there mental health issues where you need someone with training and things like that?
Mhm.
List it down and have the eligibilities, and then obviously when you hire someone, make sure that that person has those eligibilities,
Yeah.
and not say, okay, we will temporarily accept you and then try to get the I mean, by the time this is done, you will probably get the credentials already. I mean, I feel that it's a waste of time for both
Yeah.
sides and money.
Yeah. I agree, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but it feels like sometimes that they have a different expectation. Like they feel like they can they can not get away, but they can go ahead
Yeah.
without actually thinking about
I think
the
that's
consequence.
what they feel, that
Yeah.
they can get away with it.
Okay.
But I don't think that. I mean, like any system, it's not perfect. So people get away with things
Yeah.
a lot. But I just don't think that that should be the standard, because then what if
Mhm.
you are the one who's not gonna get away with it? Then what will happen to the time you spent and the money you spent on it
Correct.
and the reputation?
So your advice would be to assess first the necessity of
Yeah,
your
I
clients.
mean, like any job, right?
Yeah, and then also the last thing is like where do you think your potential hiree should have the credential, the healthcare certificate
As soon as possible,
before
before
even
anything. So
yeah
the first few items, the first few steps
yeah
will be in the Department of Labor anyway,
Yeah.
which takes months.
Yep.
So I mean, you have the time
correct
to do it. Because what if you're not qualified? What if you don't pass? What
Correct.
if you don't get English or the English test? Or I mean, a lot of things could go wrong.
yeah
Your computer broke or something.
Yeah.
So and then you cannot stop the process once it's started. Like, there are deadlines and stuff. So how are you gonna do that? I mean, you cannot tell them, oh, but it's not finished or whatever.
Correct.
Like, USCIS does not accept those things.
okay, so
So
for me it's done, it's clear.
okay, so we will talk about specifically credentialing next time, which
Yeah.
you can talk about it more than me. And then we can do maybe H1B
Yep.
or something.
Correct.
If there are questions that we get about it.
Okay,
So I hope this has been helpful. Give us a call or
contact us.
contact us if you need clarifications. Thank you.